Dicamba, an herbicide that has been used by farmers since the 1960s, has recently surged in popularity due to the development of genetically modified dicamba-resistant soybeans and cotton. This greater use of dicamba has led to an increase in a problem that has been known about and studied since the herbicide's original debut in agriculture, dicamba drift. This arises when the herbicide runs off from a field that contains dicamba-resistant crops into nearby wildlife areas or fields of non-resistant crops, resulting in stunted plant growth or death. In recent years, this problem has affected hundreds of millions of acres of crops. Despite this, the EPA's present stance on dicamba still allows for moderately restricted use of the herbicide, and only 16 states have banned its use. Moving forward, more methods for identifying dicamba-related damage, as well as new dicamba application methods, must be explored to limit agricultural and environmental damage from dicamba drift. Dicamba works by causing abnormal growth within plants, which leads to death when a high enough dose is applied. It is used to control broadleaf weeds and generally kills legumes, but poses no major environmental threat to animals not on the field to which it is applied. Dicamba has also been shown to not significantly increase the cancer rate of applicators, nor have any major detrimental health effects for humans who live near application or consume crops treated with it. However, its half-life in soil is between 30 and 60 days and is not broken down by water, making it vulnerable to transport by rain. This has led to a problem called dicamba drift, which occurs when the herbicide moves from the field in which it is applied to other nearby areas, causing non-resistant crops and flora to die or have slower than normal growth. This is somewhat demonstrated here, where the crops on the right are soybeans that are dicamba resistant, and the crops on the left are soybeans that have no dicamba resistance. And you can clearly see that the crops on the left have very stunted growth compared to those on the right. Dicamba drift affects farmers who don't use dicamba, as shown there, but work near others who do, and resulted in damage to up to 5% of soybeans grown in Iowa in 2018. Additionally, in a survey of 312 Nebraskan farmers conducted in 2017, over half of respondents reported some kind of damage from dicamba drift, though only 7% of those respondents filed an official complaint with the State Department of Agriculture. Presently, the EPA has ruled that dicamba can be used to treat soybeans and cotton that are genetically modified to be resistant to the herbicide up to twice per growing season, with few other regulations on its use. The EPA has acknowledged the environmental risks of dicamba drift, but believes that the currently allowed levels of exposure are sufficient to minimize off-field damage. Many studies have been performed that explore the effects of dicamba drift on both surrounding crops and the surrounding environment. All these studies explored the effects of dicamba drift from fields that use traditional dicamba application techniques, and thus all reached similar results regarding the damage caused by the herbicide, as summarized in the paragraph above. Present EPA policy regarding dicamba drift is based off these policies and uses them as guidelines for the amount of dicamba and number of applications that farmers can use. However, few studies thus far have explored alternative methods of dicamba application, and research is still being conducted to improve upon existing methods of application. Recent advances have been made in easily identifying the effects of dicamba drift. One study, as shown right here, has crafted a method that uses simple hyperspectral imaging of crops to identify damage and has 90% agreement with slower, more labor-intensive traditional methods. So what's shown here is on the top you have a cutting from soybean, and on the bottom you have that soybean after it was exposed to a certain amount of dicamba, and that's in columns A and C. And then column B is a simplification of these images down where it basically just highlights the leaves, and using that they were able to make processing these images much faster and make it much easier for computers to identify which leaves have been damaged. Anyways, as this method by Zhang and other simple methods of dicamba drift damage identification are further explored, it will pave the way for further studies to be more easily performed, identifying different and better methods of dicamba application that will hopefully further limit the effects of dicamba drift. Due to how dicamba affects plants and the surrounding environment, farmers and the producers of the herbicide and its resistant crops are the main stakeholders within this issue. Environmental damage from dicamba is generally minimal, and its use or lack thereof would not cause a significant enough difference in production of any crop for U.S. consumers to notice a shortage. Most farmers who use the herbicide think it's very good and effective, as its less popular use up until lately, with the development of genetically resistant soybeans and cotton, has made few weeds develop resistance to it. Additionally, the number of dicamba-related complaints has been going downward more recently. Monsanto, the primary producer of dicamba-resistant crops, claims that between 2017 and 2018, the number of dicamba-related complaints fell from 99 to just 13 per million acres of seed used. The Arkansas State Plant Board received 1,014 complaints in 2017, 200 complaints in 2018, and over 200 thus far this year. This, along with Monsanto's numbers, show a significant decrease in the number of complaints against dicamba. On the other hand, the EPA and state environmental agencies have received many complaints by farmers of significant crop damage from off-field movement of dicamba, to quote. And that's on crops being grown near fields that use dicamba, often by farmers who aren't themselves using the herbicide at all. An ISU agronomist stated that farmers who are growing non-dicamba resistant soybeans, to quote, are really upset with the continued off-target movement of dicamba. With regards to the greater environmental effects of dicamba, beekeeper Richard Roy claims that dicamba is responsible for lowering his honey production by 40 to 50% due to it killing red vine. He stated of dicamba in 2019, "If the situation in Arkansas does not change, we will be forced to stop honey production in the state," which he then did have to do in 2019. Dicamba is a controversial crop amongst many farmers due to its adverse effects to the area around application. Despite all these complaints, dicamba-resistant crops continue to grow in popularity in the U.S. In 2019, more than 40% of U.S. soybean producers plan to apply dicamba as an herbicide, making both it and dicamba-resistant crops a major factor in the soybean market. Xtend soybeans, which are produced by Monsanto and are worth almost $1 billion annually, are the primary dicamba-resistant crop and continue to grow in popularity. Internationally, Xtend soybeans have not received as positive reception. As a Brazilian farmer stated of Monsanto's parent company Bayer with regards to Xtend, "They're selling us a problem we don't have to be able to sell us the solution." Dicamba is a popular herbicide, especially with regards to soybean production, that continues to spark tensions between farmers who use resistant crops and those who don't, leading to crop damage. Moving forward, it is important that dicamba is carefully regulated to minimize the effects of dicamba drift on nearby farmers' fields. The increasing prevalence of dicamba has made dicamba drift a serious issue for both farmers who use the herbicide and those who don't. Presently, the EPA has imposed regulations that limit the number of times and amount of dicamba that can be used on a field, but the existing method of application still leads to off-field dicamba drift that can damage nearby crops. As no less detrimental method of dicamba application has yet been developed, it is important to create an effective means of identifying damage from dicamba drift. Zhang et al., whose study is shown there, have developed a simpler method for identifying damage from dicamba drift in nearby fields. The EPA should allocate funds for 2 years of research across at least 5 labs, further exploring Zhang's and other similar dicamba-related damage identification techniques, in an effort to create a simple and easy method of determining the degree of dicamba-related damage to crops. Increasing funding for research exploring identification techniques of dicamba should significantly decrease the effects of dicamba drift on farmers who do not grow dicamba-resistant crops. This is because many states already have existing methods for punishing farmers who cause damage to nearby wildlife or agriculture through dicamba drift. Increased ease of identifying whether damage is dicamba-related will make it easier for states to punish in these cases and thus dissuade the use of dicamba in a harmful manner. Additionally, it will make it easier for further studies to be performed on various dicamba application techniques so as to determine what method results in the least dicamba drift. Dicamba is already a major herbicide in the U.S. and is becoming more and more popular, so it is important that it is properly regulated to the benefit of all farmers, both those who use the herbicide and those who don't. Thank you.